Seems like we just start off with that Star Wars meme where Ben Kenobi was talking to the stormtroopers. This is not the crash that you're looking for. What I mean by that is the great real estate crash of 2023 either did or did not happen, maybe depending how you look at it. See, people inside the real estate industry, real estate agents, lenders, things like that, they tend to look at a crash in number of homes being sold, where people outside the industry, home buyers and sellers, tend to look at a crash in terms of pricing. So while we did see far fewer sales in 2023 than the previous year, that was not reflected really in pricing. Actually, we saw prices on a whole go up over the year. And with the Fed announcing, or a lot of people hinting and expecting that they're going to cut rates in 2024, what does that mean? Well, some people are saying they're going to cut it 4 times, 6 times at the first quarter, the second quarter. That's still obviously to be determined. What I can tell you is the bond market, which directly affects mortgage rates, is preparing for rate cuts and mortgage rates to come down. What is all this going to mean for the 2024 housing market? We're going to talk about all that today. I'm Jeff Valentino. I love helping people buy and sell real estate. If that's you, my contact information is below. And you know on here we do data over drama. So we're going to cut through all that stuff and we're really going to look into the data. And I know other agents watch this. Remember, data over drama is trademarked by me, so don't use that. I know also you might not expect someone as witty or as handsome as me to be a real data nerd. You serious? But I am. I live, eat, breathe this stuff 7 days a week. But I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it moving quick. We're going to break it down into a few different sections. We're going to look at some real data going on right now. We're going to combine that with trends that we're seeing in the market and I expect to continue over the next few months. And then I'm going to make some prediction on where I think the 2024 housing market is going to go for Forsyth County and Winston-Salem. Last, I'm going to have some advice if you're looking to buy or sell in 2024. So first part on the data, and this is going to be for Forsyth County. It's going to be a similar story throughout the Triad, Greensboro, and High Point, but for the numbers that I'm about to give, this data is for Forsyth County, with Winston-Salem area primarily. Last month, the average sales price in Forsyth County jumped over $20,000. This kind of went against the seasonal norm, but at the same time, I'm not the biggest fan of this number. A lot of people tend to think that this means the same house that sold, this much would have been $20,000 less the previous month, when really that's not exactly the case. It's a good indicator on where prices are going, but it does not, go house for house. But again, it is a good indicator on kind of where the market is heading. As a matter of fact, the average sales price right now is really at an all-time high. We haven't seen this, and definitely not over the past 10 years as far back as the charts can go, but just knowing how Winston-Salem is, this is at an all-time high for average sales price. Also, in the past 7 days from recording this, about 66% of the listings went under contract in 7 days or less, and the median for all listings last month in Forsyth County was 9 days. Given those first two numbers, this next number might really surprise you, but our number of pending sales, homes that are under contract waiting to close right now, is at a 10-year low. It's the lowest level we've seen in the last 10 years. What does that tell you? If prices are up and houses are going under contract relatively quickly, but the number of pending sales has dropped off the face of the earth, basically, that points to a major supply problem, right? Demand is still relatively high, but there is just a housing shortage kind of going on right now in Forsyth County. On the mortgage side, across the country, Mortgage News Daily reports there were about 20% fewer applications this year than the previous year, which points to demand taking a pretty big hit. Now I did hear, this is anecdotal, but I did hear from a large lender that while their mortgage business is down significantly this year over last year, the number of applications was actually up for them, which points to even more kind of pent up demand. But again, take that with a grain of salt. That's one lender. It's a large regional lender, but still I thought that was something interesting to pass along. So now that we have that data, let's take a look at some trends that's going on right now in Forsyth County and Winston-Salem and see where that can point us as well. Here's another one that really points to the strength of the Winston-Salem housing market. While the country on average in the past year, they lost about $3.2 thousand in equity, Winston-Salem gained a little over $6,000 in that same time. When you take into consideration that our housing market is lower priced than the rest of the country on average, and while the rest of the country has lost equity or seen a little bit of a price drop over the past year, you see that in Winston-Salem, the housing market here still remains strong. That's why local information is always really, really important when you're looking into these things. Now, the economy is obviously a big trend that a lot of people are talking about. JP Morgan just had a meeting on December 4th. During that meeting, they said they expect a slight slowdown in the economy in the first quarter of 2024, with it picking back up in the second half. At that meeting, they placed the chances for a deep recession to be about 25%. So they're kind of thinking we're going to come into a little bit more of a soft landing, but there is about according to them at least, about a 25% chance that we will go into deep recession in 2024. Another trend that we talk about on the market updates every month is overall supply remains low. It's been under 2 months of supply for over 3.5 years now. I generally expect that trend to continue for a lot of reasons that I've talked about before. But a good one to take note of is we're still about 30% fewer homes for sale than we were before the pandemic. And before the pandemic, Winston-Salem was still in a seller's market. It wasn't the insane one like we saw the last few years, but it was still a seller's market in 2019 in Winston-Salem. So if our supply is below that number still, and our demand, even if it remained constant, right, let alone the fact that Winston-Salem is growing at 1 or 2% per year in population, that points to kind of where the market could be heading next year. On the other side of that coin is demand. Demand has taken a big hit this year. We've seen that, what we just mentioned, in mortgage applications and things like that. We've seen it in overall listing activity with fewer showings per home. But remember, the overall lack of inventory has kept pricing high. It's kept homes going under contract relatively quickly. So again, I think that trend will continue into next year simply because of where we're at. One other interesting trend I want to talk about in the total number of active listings right now in Forsyth County. So Winston-Salem and the immediate suburbs, total number of listings, almost a third of those are new construction sales. This is an important trend to recognize because that is over double of typically what it is, especially when you take the entire county as a whole. We're not a huge new construction market here, as I've mentioned before, but with that big of a chunk of active listings being new construction, it's important to recognize this trend because I definitely think that is going to continue into 2024. So if you haven't considered new construction before and you're looking for a house, I think there are a lot of benefits. I ended up buying a new construction home when I had no intention to originally. I've made some videos on that, but if you want to discuss that, please reach out. I can go over the entire process with you as well. So we have the data and the trends. I'm going to give you some predictions on what I think now is going to happen in 2024. This is going to be on the internet forever. Maybe I'll delete it if I'm wrong. I'm just kidding. I won't delete it, but you can come back and yell at me in the comments or call and give me an attaboy if I end up being right. But here's what I think is going to happen next year. So not only do I talk to hundreds of people a year about buying or selling real estate in Winston-Salem, but just going over the regional and national numbers, I think demand is still going to be high. I think actually there's probably about 2 years of pent-up demand. I talked to so many people over the last couple of years when things were super crazy, where they just put off buying a house. That, for most of them ended up being a pretty big mistake because prices really jumped. But I think there is a lot of pent-up demand. I think the Fed will lower rates. We'll see rates come down in 2024. And I think that is going to drive demand and activity back into an already kind of busy market. So I think the spring is going to be a busy market with a lot of high demand in Winston-Salem. Now I hope this happens. I don't know if it will. I hope that if rates come down enough, and I'm guessing of where that range is, right? If it's in the 5 or 6 range, maybe some of those people that locked in that really low interest rate in the early part of the pandemic, maybe they'll decide, hey, let's go ahead and list our starter home and move up to a move-up house. That will open up more inventory for first-time home buyers. That will bring some liquidity back into the market and prices won't go crazy. Good time to make this prediction. I don't think prices are going to go crazy this year. I do think they're going to go up in the spring though. I'm actually trying to buy an investment property before spring because I think prices are going to go up. However, I do know that buyers are really sensitive. It's been a frustrating time the last few years for a lot of people. I totally understand that, and I understand that they're sensitive. Again, we've seen that in the other data, right? Fewer showings, buyers being more picky. Some have just chosen to sit out on the sidelines. That will continue if rates don't come down. I mean, if rates, heaven forbid, go back up to the 8% range where we saw that, I think that will just squash a lot of activity. I don't think that's going to happen. But overall, I think prices will go up some next year, not a dramatic increase, probably a few percent. I think sellers overall are going to remain in a better negotiating position. But as I just said, buyers aren't going to just do whatever, whenever, wherever, for how much ever again. So sellers, you do need to have your home ready, have a solid marketing plan to get it the most exposure possible, be willing to do some repairs. You have to think of these things because not only will you be competing with more choosy buyers, you're going to be competing with a lot more new construction in 2024 than you have in the past. So if your house is way out of date and it's a similar price to a brand new house, we have to, consider all things in that regard. All right, wild card of all those predictions, I'm going to give myself one out here. It's going to be an election year. Let's just say that will probably be interesting. Now, I tend to think with that, maybe I'm wrong on this, but I tend to think that, going into an election year, Politicians are going to want a strong economy with relatively low rates, or at least rates that have come down off their peak so they can campaign on these type of things. So again, to me, that points to rates coming down, demand coming back up, and just overall a little bit better for buyers, but still a competitive market. So my advice is next year, if you're thinking about selling, look, you got to interview agents. You have to have someone with a solid marketing plan, because as we saw in the data, again, buyers are more choosy. You are going to be competing against more new construction next year. You have to find a way to get your home more exposure than just taking a few pictures and putting on the email list. You got to have a comprehensive marketing plan. How are you going to make your house famous? If you need help with that, I can help. You're going to have to be prepared to have your home show ready, give it some curb appeal, make some repairs, all those things like that. Buyers, if you're buying next year, be prepared for a competitive spring. If you can buy this winter, go ahead and do that. I think it's going to be probably the best time of the year, up until maybe right before the election when people really get scared. Biggest piece of advice for buyers is the same thing. If you don't have to, don't max out your budget. Make sure your down payment and payments are comfortable. That way, if things go haywire, rates go up or whatever, you know you can afford the worst of it. If rates continue to drop after that, you can refinance. Don't try to time the market. If you need a house, you see a house, you like it, if the numbers make sense, buy the house. If you need help with any of that, I'd love to be a resource for you. You can reach out to me directly at jeff@govalentino.com. Thanks.